What's going on, you guys? Time for another episode of Beholden To Truth. As usual, we're sitting outside of the gym, sipping our pre-workout, getting caffeinated, responding to Instagram DMs, trying to live life, 9 to 5, run the Beholden To Truth platform, stay fit back here in the gym, all the things. It's a lot, but it's a blessed life. I don't want to complain. And in fact, the point of today's episode is going to be trying to put some hope out there and some optimism, because I have detected, just based on you guys' feedback, conversations I've had with some other people who are entangled in this fight with me, some black pill feelings, some emotions of despair, and that's not where we should be. We have plenty to be optimistic about, and I want to talk about how we can strategically go about our mission. Our mission being fixing the Jewish influence in America. Some people call that the ZOG, the Zionist Occupied Government, but that's a little too specific. That just implies that we only have a problem in the government, whereas we also have a problem in academia, we have a problem in the media, we have a problem in the finance industry, we have a spiritual problem in the country. So there's a lot of different fronts simultaneously that need to be addressed in order for us to get our country back on track. Not let the white race be genocided and swept off of the planet, not lose our country, not see millions and millions and millions of people in our country every year slipping into apostasy, falling away from the church, or simply living miserable lives because they feel like none of this is even achievable. It feels like we're like Sisyphus pushing the boulder up the mountain only to find it falling back on ourselves. I know the feeling, trust me. I'm friends with several other what we might call influencers, people who run platforms about this issue, and we talk about it frequently. The scale of the battle that we're involved in is crushing. Like, it's so large. I mentioned all of those 4 key civil institutions that are currently targeted directly at us, Christian European people. Their objective right now is to silence us, slowly ethnocide us, slowly allow us to lose our faith and pull us away from the Christian life, which is to be walking in alignment with God's direction, in relationship with God. And God does not intend for us to walk around this life miserable, pessimistic, depressed, anxious. That's not the life that Jesus Christ died for. So I will kick things off with the message that I got from an anonymous individual over here on Instagram. And then I'm going to talk about our strategic outlook. So this one says, big fan of everything you're doing. Takes courage. I feel like people are waking up. I also feel like the Israel stronghold is almost too strong in every aspect of America, from politics to the media to education. Where do we go from here? Our politicians are puppets. Where do we even begin to get our country back? And this is the common sentimentality that I was referring to, whether it's the other co-influencers who are actually out there on the mission field, or if it's followers who follow us for information and for motivation. Everybody is feeling it. Everybody's feeling confused and anxious and threads of doubt about whether or not this is achievable. And so let's talk about that, okay? We got to have a strategy. We have to see ourselves as an army. We are God's army. We are His workers on this material world, trying to save other humans with the time that we have been blessed with, to bring them into a relationship with God, to bring them into understanding what the truth is about everything in this world, not allowing them to destroy themselves or be complicit, intentionally or unintentionally, in the destruction of the society around them. And thinking that you can just simply read your Bible in the privacy of your home, go to church every Sunday, pray every night, that's going to be enough for us to fix the situation that we're in, that'll be enough to save you as an individual. You know, if you have faith in Jesus being who he said he was, God, if you believe that salvation comes through faith bestowed by God's grace, then you're saved, and eternally you have nothing to worry about. But you're not dead yet. You still have probably decades on this planet that you're going to have to suffer through. And it's going to be a lot more suffering if that time is spent watching other people fall into despair and self-abuse. So we have to see ourselves, all of us Christians, especially here in America, we have to see ourselves as involved more than just our own salvation, but also the salvation of the country. It's not exclusive to whites. It's not exclusive to Christians. We want everybody saved. So when we see ourselves as a collective that are fighting back in this fallen world, the best that we can, struggling with our own sin through that process, when we get into the strategy of the Great Commission, which is bestowing the gospel on everybody we can, telling them the good news and how they can save themselves through finding Jesus, we are an army, okay? In any army or any force that is mobilized to go and face the opposition, not everybody in that army holds the same role. Hopefully that's pretty obvious, right? You have colonels, generals, foot soldiers, you have different sects, you have the Air Force, you have the maritime warfare, you have intelligence warfare. There's a lot of different ranks in the army. There's divisions, there's ranks. All of these people have different purposes. And so what you should be examining in your own life is, within the context of the Great Commission, within the context of trying to protect American identity, what gifts has God given me as an individual? How can I apply those towards some specific aspect of that entire mobilized army for Christ? Where I get questions on Instagram are, what am I supposed to do about all of this? And so that's kind of the question is, where do I fit into the army? In what rank? In what division? How can I help? This war that we're in is not necessarily a war of tactile conflict. It does obviously come to that. I mean, you look at what's happening in the Middle East. You look at the attacks on our domestic soil, like 9/11, like killing our president. You know, these things obviously do affect us in physically violent ways, as 300,000 of our American sons and daughters have been drug into these wars for the Middle East. And I shouldn't say for the Middle East, for Israel. Trying to figure out, okay, where do I slot into all this? You guys are reaching out to me because I have this platform where I am okay and comfortable with sitting in front of a camera, having my identity publicly known, putting myself out there and taking on that risk voluntarily of the blowback that entails, to be publicly facing, addressing these issues about Jewish influence, standing up for white people. These things don't necessarily attract positive feedback from the institution, what some people call the deep state, what we would just simply say the interest of the international clique. They don't look kindly on our efforts, and anybody who can actually be traced back and identifiable who is trying to push those efforts, they retaliate against. They try to silence, they try to reputationally attack those people, financially attack those people, professionally attack those people. They try to make your life miserable if you're actually identified as being a partaker in that movement. And so the ask is not for everybody to go and out themselves with their face and their name and their identity as, I know about Jewish influence and here's what I think about it and here's my propose solutions for it. That's not necessarily what we need. There's a difference between your public missionary work and your private relationships. So red pilling your family about the JQ and about white genocide, talking about it with your friends, talking about it with people at your church, people in your community, reaching out directly to them, that's encouraged for sure. Now, adopting the inevitable consequences of that is something you should be prepared for. Losing friendships, losing family relationships, potentially losing romantic opportunities, potentially losing professional opportunities. Yeah, those things are likely to happen. And I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that they're not. That doesn't mean that it's not worth it. For me, it's been worth it. And for plenty of other people, it's been worth it. But there is no other way to win an information war than by sharing information. We're not looking to pick up rifles or shovels or clubs. We're not trying to get nooses around people. We don't want any violence. Hopefully everybody understands that, but I have to reiterate it when I talk about being in a war. We're not implying that violence is the solution or the way out of this situation. It's an information war. And so the only way to win an information war is by getting information out. And so in your community, you do that face-to-face. In your family, you do that face-to-face in all the circles that I mentioned before. In order to do well in those conversations and to not just come off as a loony conspiracy theorist or somebody who just hates Jews or hates minorities or hates gays, all this other stuff that you will be slandered with, you have to be articulate and you have to be familiar with straight up facts, empirical evidence. So I've mentioned this in my previous vlogs recently that you start out that education by following somebody who's already done that research, who's comfortable presenting themselves on these subjects, and you just collect knowledge and you practice your ability to regurgitate it. Doesn't need to be on camera, doesn't need to be in front of a large audience, but learn the material, write it down if you have to, do video journals if you want to, but learn the material. Learn about the different civil institutions. I mention the big four all the time. You have government, you have finance, you have media, and you have education. And understand how all of those have been infiltrated by Jews, whether it's the 6 out of 8 Ivy League schools having Jewish presidents, whether it's the Federal Reserve being run for the majority of its entire 100-year history by Jews, the practice of usury being uniquely legal for Jews and illegal for Christians and Muslims. The Rothschilds, who stood up this international banking syndicate and infiltrated all of the European nations to finance both sides of all of these wars. Understanding the media, who owns all these conglomerates where, it looks like it's just 4 or 5 companies, but then there's 12 to 50 companies beneath each one of those, and they all have to pass through the highest levels of approval when it comes to writing the teleprompter scripts for their news channels. They have to pass the producer and the editor and all this stuff, and they take their guidelines from the board of those companies. They have an agenda. They have certain countries they want to talk about. There's certain countries they don't want to talk about. Right? So understanding how the media is structured is a key component of this. Understanding academia, the finance world, and then understanding how your own government is infiltrated. We talk all the time about the American and Israel Political Action Committee, AIPAC, and the fact that they're the largest donor every presidential cycle, and they get involved at the state level with governor campaigns. All throughout Congress, all of these people are influenced by foreign lobbyists from Israel. And if they are not willing to advocate for Israel causes, they don't receive the financial backing. If they don't get the financial backing, they don't get the media spots. If they don't get the media spots, they don't get the votes. And so this is super high level. There's a lot more to it. There's also blackmail, okay? That you start talking about the Epstein spy ring and how it has infiltrated all of those civil institutions via blackmail. So getting familiar with the civil institutions that I mentioned before, how they've been infiltrated, this is the stuff that arms you with the ability to communicate well to your family and friends and your church members and so on, that it's not about hating other people of other religions or other races or other nations. This is simply saying that America must have sovereignty. We must be running ourselves. No other foreign nation should be dictating what wars we go into. They shouldn't be dictating our economic policy. They shouldn't be dictating our social policy. We shouldn't have international Jews like George Soros and Larry Fink, mega trillionaires, deciding what our corporations, through owning shares in their company, what guidelines their human resources set on hiring practices and social policies and so on. We can't have an external influence that is non-Christian specifically, even worse. It's foreign in that it's not American, and it is anti-Christ. We can't have these foreign anti-Christ influences meddling in our government, meddling in our media and in our education system, and literally controlling our currency, our economy. So the different ranks in the army is what I want to come back to. Once you are informed with all of that information and you've done your historical research to see how Israel infiltrated all of those institutions and what they're doing currently, then we have to talk about the missionary work of sharing that information. I talked before about your inner circles. What is your role in social media? Because everybody's contacting me via social media. Nobody's calling me on the phone or texting me about this stuff. You guys have questions through a social media platform. It's understandable that the majority of people are not in a place in their life where they can take on the risks that I have, or that maybe Nick Fuentes has, or maybe Candace Owens has, or Andrew Tate, or somebody, these people who are talking openly about Jewish influence or Israel influence, Zionism, and all this stuff. Not everybody has the economic protections. Maybe you're just simply not born with the amount of courage that requires. It's not a personal insult, but as I said, we're structured as an army, and just look at any given army. Not everybody is leading that army. Not everybody is drawing up the battle plans for that operation. And so there's going to be leaders in the army, and there are going to be people who are following direction. And so the directions are disseminated from the leaders, and the leaders are responsible with being the publicly accountable, taking on that risk for those directions and developing the strategy. And so if you are somebody who says, I don't want to be in the spotlight, I don't want the accountability and all the risk of being a leader in this movement, but I do want to help, a rank in this army is anonymous activism. All of the anonymous meme accounts, all of the ones who are simply resharing and remixing content from people like me or Nick or my friend Jeremy who runs JSlay USA, the Burn Pit podcast. There's easily 12 to 15 that I can probably think of, large accounts, people with 20,000, 50,000, 100,000 followers, even stuff like Ian Carroll. You got the Hodge twins. There's plenty of content that you don't need to go and create, that you can just reuse, and you can reuse it anonymously. And by doing that, you're boosting that content in the algorithm, and you're drawing attention to those creators, to the people who are okay with adopting all of that risk and who have the talent and the blessings to do so. Not everybody has that talent. Not everybody has the time to manage all of those tasks. And so you can be involved in this information war and getting the information out there, and you can do so safely through anonymous activism. And that's probably my biggest ask, is that none of us are saying you all need to go out and create podcasts and record original content to get this information out. All you have to do is hit the share story button, remix button, forward button, DM button. And you can do that if you have a individual account with your name on it. If you're comfortable, then by all means go for that. But if you don't want to take on that risk of being tied back to this content, then create an anonymous account. Follow all the people that you see me following and me resharing, because I do this too. On any given month, I can show you guys the numbers. I share over 500 pieces of content on any given month. That's my average. Some months it's hundreds higher than that. And so I'm not creating 500 pieces of content, but one of the reasons I have so many followers that I do is because I am consistently sharing content that I have found. So you can do that too, and you can do that shielding your anonymity. You don't have to go and be a public-facing figure with these subjects. You can serve in the anonymous army and help us win this information war. So that's probably all I'm going to say for now, because there's a lot more that I need to flesh out about the different ranks of the army. I'll give you guys a little preview of what that looks like. I'm going to go on Jeremy's platform, JSlay USA, probably later this week, and I have a feeling this conversation is going to come up. I mentioned before that you have to self-assess what blessings God has given you. Look at the career that you have found success in. Look at your hobbies and interests that you enjoy. This movement needs not only reshares of content on social media, but we need professionally talented people as well. We need lawyers. We need people who are good with simply editing and creating content, not with their face on it and not with their identity on it, but documentary filmmakers, social media marketers. We need technological innovators, people who are good at building websites. We need smart, capable people who are willing to lend their talents to this movement. And by lend, that's a very important word to use, because this does not pay. None of us are getting paid for this. You know, Nick has done well for himself. He found a way through super chats to finance his operation, but that happened over 8 years. For myself personally, I've been running Beholden To Truth for several years, and I haven't made a single penny. I've lost thousands of dollars running this platform. That's okay with me. I'm fine with it. It's worth it. But what I'm saying is that when you see me sharing the gifts that God has given me, the gift of articulation and communication, courage, the professional career that I have that allows me to feel financially secure so that I can take these risks, I've done that self-assessment and said, you know, how has God blessed me in all these different ways, and how can I use those blessings to make an impact on this movement? Now it's everybody else's turn. And it's important that you do this without thinking that this is a transaction where you're going to get rewarded in any kind of material sense. The payoff of this is going to be bringing people to Jesus Christ and saving our country. It's not going to be you making a career out of this and making spending money or savings money. That certainly hasn't been the case for me. That hasn't been the case for Lucas Gage or anyone else who has taken on this body of work publicly to move the ball forward. It's not a self-interested, for-profit endeavor. Trust me. When you lend your capacity and your blessings, your talents, your time to this movement, it's done so believing that God gave you those things so that you could invest them in his kingdom here on earth. Standing for the truth, defending Christendom, defending those who are being persecuted and borne false witness against, who are the white European people right now. So be willing to be selfless. You don't have to go and destroy your life by putting your identity on all this stuff, but lend your talents and your capabilities to this movement. We need a lot of help. We really do. So you got to be capable, you got to be selfless, you got to be informed, you got to be careful. Got to be careful as well. So just a short video today, if you would call 24 minutes short, but expect more on this subject, I would say. I'm going to be, as I said, hopefully going on JSlay USA's show later this week. If not this week, probably pretty soon. And we'll have a longer conversation about the current state of the mission. So until next time, you guys, pray. That's the tool that we are given that solicits a power infinitely higher than ourselves. Stay close to the word. That's our other weapon. It's called the sword for a reason. Stay close to your fellow Christians. Stay positive. All right, you guys, till next time.
Beholden to Truth.